Today, you'll improve your English faster by reading the news. And this method really works because when you learn with the news, you'll expand your vocabulary, learn advanced grammar, and learn correct pronunciation at the same time.
Let's do this.
Welcome back to JForrest English. Of course, I'm Jennifer. Now let's get started. Our headline, a happier country equals a healthier one, but only above a certain threshold. Let's review this word, threshold. The pronunciation, repeat after me, threshold, threshold. It's a noun. You can think of it, a replacement word would be above a certain point or certain level. So let's say you get to 5. That's the point or the level. That's the threshold. So above 5, 6, 7, 8, you can be healthier. Below 5, if it's 4 or 3, there's no impact on health. So that's the threshold. And notice here the use of the comparative form of the word. They're not stating the other country that's being compared to, is just implied. So let's say country A is happier than country B. So you would use X is happier than B. And same, you can replace that with healthier, happier, whatever the adjective form is. And equals has an S because we're talking about one country. So it's it. It equals. So it's third person singular. Or maybe you're thinking, learning with JForrest English makes me happier than, our comparative word, than learning alone. So here in our sentence, we have an action. Learning makes me happier. Now you need this makes me, otherwise the comparative adjective, which would be with the subject, learning with JForrest English. But there needs to be some reference to you. That's why we have this makes me. And this beginning part, this gerund expression learning is conjugated as third person singular as well, which is why you have the S on makes. Makes me happier than learning alone. If you agree with that, then put that's right, put that's right in the comments. And don't worry about taking these notes. I summarize everything in a free lesson PDF. You can find the link in the description. Now let's learn about these happier countries. Happier people. So people who are happier, so you can just use this as the adjective before. Happier people. People is the plural word of person. One person, two people, which is why we have are more successful. More successful than unhappy people. So that would be the opposite of happy people, unhappy people. More successful in their careers. Repeat after me because I hear a lot of mispronunciations with this word. Career, career, rear. So make sure you get, the sound is rear, like behind you, rear, rear. And it's a long sound because it's the stress sound. So this is the unstressed sound. Career, career. And then just add the S, careers. More successful in their careers, have more fulfilling relationships. So again, our auxiliary verb is still conjugated with the subject. So as you're going on and you're adding, make sure that you're conjugating correctly based on what you've previously written. Have more fulfilling relationships. This is still a comparative. More fulfilling relationships than unhappy people. And live longer, healthier lives. So not just longer, it's longer, healthier lives. So here, this comment tells me that both of these points modify lives. They live longer lives, they live healthier lives. They live longer, healthier lives. Previous research has shown. So notice here, has shown. This is our present perfect, is conjugated with the subject, which is research. So it's third person singular, which is why we have has. Now they're using the present perfect because it's a completed past action. You can look at the research. It's completed. but there's an impact in the present. There's a result in the present, and that's the use of the present perfect. It connects the past to the present. So that connection is, well, we're talking about it now. People are using that research today. Previous research has shown. Now, scientists say they have identified the happiness threshold. So what is a replacement word to threshold? Happiness point, level, limit. Those could be replacement words. The happiness threshold. So notice that unvoiced TH. Threshold. The happiness threshold needed for a country's population. So here, you could say for a country, but they want to focus on population. So this apostrophe S shows that the population belongs to the country. And of course, the population just represents the people who live in the country, which makes sense that they want to focus on population since it's the people who experience happiness. Needed for a country's population as a whole. Adding as a whole isn't required because if you just say a country's population, you will assume it's the entire population because there's nothing that suggests it isn't. But adding these words just reinforces it. It makes it stronger. So as a whole, referring to the population, the entire population. So you could use the word entire. If you use that, you would say for a country's entire population. So you would put entire before the word population. But here it's as a whole, to achieve certain health benefits. So this basically summarizes our headline where they're saying, according to these scientists, there is some sort of limit, level, or point where people become healthier if they have a certain level of happiness.
Are you enjoying this lesson? If you are, then I want to tell you about the Finally Fluent Academy. This is my premium training program where we study native English speakers from TV, movies, YouTube, and the news so you can improve your listening skills of fast English, expand your vocabulary with natural expressions, and learn advanced grammar easily. Plus, you'll have me as your personal coach. You can look in the description for the link to learn more, or you can go to my website and click on Finally Fluent Academy. Now let's continue with our lesson.
Specifically, a nation's happiness level. So the happiness level of a nation, it belongs to the nation, can influence its people's risk of premature death from chronic illnesses. So here, it's people's risk. So you could say it's citizens or it's populations. Those would be replacements because you want to refer to the people who live in a country. It's still obvious here because it uses its, and the it belongs to the nation, and the people who live in a nation are the citizens or the population. But those are alternative words. It's people's risk of premature death. So premature means that it happened too quickly. So before the average age of death, for example. You can use this in other contexts. You might say starting the report was premature, or contacting the client was premature. We did it too quickly based on the stage we're at, or based on the information we have, our resources. Maybe even for you, you might say taking my IELTS was premature. Maybe your level of English wasn't high enough for you to schedule your IELTS, but hey, maybe it was just good experience regardless of the results. So premature is a very useful word to have in your vocabulary. Premature, the word is an adjective, which will tell you the sentence structure. There are two common sentence structures. Let's take a look at the IELTS example. You can start with an action. Scheduling my IELTS was premature. So because premature is an adjective, you need a verb, or it would modify a noun. So in this case, the verb is to be in the past, to be premature. Now, it's also common to just change that sentence structure, but communicate the exact same thing. And you can say, it was premature of me to schedule my IELTS. It was premature of me to schedule my IELTS. So this one, it is just focusing on the person doing the action, and this one is focusing on the action itself. The of me is not a required part of the structure. It is commonly included. And of course, you would change that to whatever group you're referring to. It was premature of them to contact the client. It was premature of my team to give the presentation, whatever group it is or whatever action it is. So that's a great word to have in your vocabulary. So here, premature is an adjective. It describes the noun, death. Risk of death. Risk of what type of death? Premature death, happening too soon. From chronic illnesses such as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and respiratory disease, according to a study published on October 20th. So remember, when you have the month plus the day, you use a preposition on. If you didn't have the day and you just had the month, it would be in October, on October 20th, in the journal Frontiers in Medicine. Now, these two words are capitalized because the name of the journal is Frontiers in Medicine. I know that because they said in the journal, and then I see capitalize. Often they don't capitalize auxiliary verbs or prepositions. So this is the official name, and official names are capitalized. Let's keep reading. The research team used a scale called the Life Ladder to estimate the happiness levels of 123 countries. So again, same thing. You might be wondering, why is this capitalized? Because they just said there's a scale, and the name of that scale called the Life Ladder. So this is an official name. So you can have official names for publications like journals, or even a process or a tool. And if it's an official name, then you can capitalize the first letter, but generally not the prepositions, although stylistically you can capitalize every first letter in that name. So they use this scale. The official name is the Life Ladder to estimate the happiness levels of 123 countries. 0 represents the worst possible life imaginable. So if you complete this scale, if you complete the Life Ladder and your score is 0, that's the lowest. It's the worst possible life imaginable. So here we have the superlative, the worst. And remember, with superlatives, you need the worst. And then the opposite is, of course, the best. And 10, the best. So level 10, if you score a level 10, congratulations, you are the happiest you can possibly be. It's the best score you can receive. Let's keep reading. Once a country surpasses a score of 2.7. So what does surpass mean? Or once a country surpassed a score. I think I said surpasses, but here it's the ED form. Surpassed a score. So if they surpass it, it means they go beyond it. So their score is higher. 2.8, 3, 3.5, 10, anything above. So that would be to surpass. And this is something you definitely want to hear from your boss, manager, teacher, spouse, friend. Jennifer, you've surpassed my expectations. You've surpassed my expectations. Surpass sounds a little more formal than saying exceeded, to be honest. So you could also say exceeded. And went beyond, this would be the past simple, because the infinitive is to go beyond. So you have to conjugate your verb go in the past simple went. Jennifer, you've gone, well, this would be gone because it's the present perfect. You've gone beyond my expectations. You've exceeded, you've surpassed my expectations. So maybe you plan something special for your friend's birthday or your spouse's birthday, and then they say, wow, thank you so much. You've exceeded my expectations. So their expectation of how amazing the party would be was here, and then the reality was higher. You've exceeded, which is a very good thing. So hopefully you get this feedback, and I certainly hope this is true with this lesson as well. If it is, then you can put surpassed, put the word surpassed in the comments, because that will also help you remember this, because writing it out is a great way to get that repetition. So put surpassed in the comments if I have surpassed your expectations. Once a country surpassed a score of 2.7, its happiness was tied to a decrease in deaths. So if its happiness was tied to, you can replace the word tied with connected or linked to. It simply means that if their happiness is here, then the deaths would be there, and there was a connection between them. Was tied to a decrease in deaths due to chronic or non-communicable diseases among people 30 to 70 years old. So maybe they're not saying deaths caused by car accidents, for example. You can be very happy and still get into a car accident and die. So they're just being specific about the types of deaths, chronic or non-communicable diseases. And then also they're being specific about the ages of people. So the age range, 30 to 70. So that's the range. It starts at 30 and it ends at 70. 30 to 70 years old, researchers found. Let's keep reading. Scores range. So the happiness scores they received from that life ladder exercise. The scores ranged from 2.18 to 7.97. And remember, 0 was the worst, the lowest, and 10 was the highest, the best. So these were, I guess, the average scores. Well, the average, they said right here, with an average of 5.45. So right in the middle, because we have 0 to 10. So the average was right in the middle, 5.45. So remember here, I said 30 to 70. That is the age range. So the start point and the end point. So here, notice they use that word range, but they're using it as a verb. So to range. And the scores ranged from, you use from before the first point, the first amount, 2.18, and then you use to before the second point. So the starting point and the ending point, from starting point to ending point. You see this with hours of operations. We're open from 9 to 5. So hopefully you already know that. There's lots of examples with from to. But notice when you use average with an average of, an average of, an average of. Let's keep going. Policies that lift national life ladder scores. So lift means to increase it. So instead of 2.18 being the lowest, maybe 3.79 would be the lowest. So to increase. And notice here we have a quotation mark. So this tells me that this information is coming from the words of someone, most likely these researchers, according to the study. Policies that lift national life ladder scores, that increase the scores, and then this is the type of score. Scores above the 2.7 threshold. Okay, so remember 2.7 threshold means above 2.7, there's a link, a connection between happiness and longer life. But below 2.7, so 2.65, 1.3, there is not a connection. So that's the 2.7 threshold. Scores above the 2.7 threshold through, so this is how are you going to lift the scores? How are you going to increase the scores? Through, so this is how they will do it. I'll improve my English through your videos, Jennifer. So this is the means, the how. Through investments in health systems, anti-corruption reforms, social safety nets, and healthy urban environments. So basically just investments. We can assume financial investments, but because they didn't say, it could be other investments as well, infrastructure or simply volunteer hours as well. So this is how. Now, between these dashes means that you can take out all of this information and grammatically the sentence must be correct. So we have to continue from this above the 2.7 threshold can initiate. So if you use this in your writing, make sure that you just look at the sentence without this information and make sure it's grammatically correct, because it's easy to forget what this belongs to when you have all of this information separating it. Can initiate a reinforcing cycle. So initiate is a more advanced way of saying can start, can begin. Can initiate a reinforcing cycle of higher happiness and lower mortality. So mortality represents death, lower death. And if it's a reinforcing cycle, it simply means that the cycle itself causes more of it to happen. So that's what the word reinforcing means. So as this cycle goes, people become happier and then deaths go down. But because people are already at a higher happiness threshold, maybe they just naturally become happier and happier from that threshold, and then deaths go down and down. So the cycle itself reinforces this. Let's keep reading. Each 1% increase in well-being, so whatever your score was, if it was 2.8, then a 1% increase in well-being correlated to a 0.43% decrease in the chronic disease mortality rate. So if they correlated, it means they're connected. So when the 1% increase in happiness happens, the 0.43% decrease happens, but the decrease does not happen if the increase does not happen. So that's how they are correlated. They're connected, they're linked, they're tied. You can use those same words we saw previously. Where was it? Here. To be tied to, connected, linked. So you could also use correlated, which sounds more mathematical or scientific. So correlated to a 0.43% decrease in the chronic disease mortality rate. So the rate of death from chronic disease, that would be the chronic disease mortality rate, but not for everyone, just among, so for adults, and then this is the age, 30 to 70 years old, according to the study. This research adds to the existing body of literature. So the body of literature, they're using the term body of to represent all the literature. So journal articles, studies, could be books as well. So the body of represents all of. Existing body of literature linking. So here, this is your verb link in the ing form. So you could also say connecting, tying happiness to health. So if they, again, remember, if they're linked or connected or tied, it means that increase in happiness results in a decrease in death. And according to the study, by these levels. Happiness is but one facet. Repeat after me. Maybe don't look at the word. Close your eyes. Facet, facet, facet. The pronunciation and the spelling don't necessarily look alike. So just link that sound, connect that sound. facet. Happiness is but one facet of a person's health. Okay, so if it's a facet, it means there are all these different categories. So I would say pronunciation is just one facet of fluency. So it's a category. The other facets, other categories, of course, sentence structure, vocabulary, your ability to use what you in speech, so your speaking skills, all of those are different facets. You could replace that with different aspects. That's a common word choice as well, but one aspect of a person's health, but one facet of a person's health. So here they're listing the different facets, the different aspects. Happiness is but one. So this but one means only one, is only one facet of a person's health. Genetic, behavioral, environmental, those are the different facets or the different aspects, different categories or types. Factors also play a role. So if they play a role, it means that they impact your risk of dying from chronic diseases. They play a role in the risk of dying from chronic diseases. And that's the end of the article. So now I'll read the article from start to finish and you can focus on my pronunciation. A happier country equals a healthier one, but only above a certain threshold. Happier people are more successful in their careers, have more fulfilling relationships, and live longer, healthier lives. Previous research has shown. Now, scientists say they have identified the happiness threshold needed for a country's population as a whole to achieve certain health benefits. Specifically, a nation's happiness level can influence its people's risk of premature death from chronic illnesses such as cancer, heart disease, diabetes, and respiratory disease, according to a study published on October 20th in the journal Frontiers in Medicine. The research team used a scale called the Life Ladder to estimate the happiness levels of 123 countries. 0 represents the worst possible life imaginable, and 10 the best. Once a country surpassed a score of 2.7, its happiness was tied to a decrease in deaths due to chronic or non-communicable diseases among people 30 to 70 years old, researchers found. Scores range from 2.18 to 7.97, with an average of 5.45. Policies that lift national life ladder scores above the 2.7 threshold through investments in health systems, anti-corruption reforms, social safety nets, and healthy urban environments can initiate a reinforcing cycle of higher happiness and lower mortality. Each 1% increase in well-being correlated to a 0.43% decrease in the chronic disease mortality rate among adults 30 to 70 years old, according to the study. The research adds to the existing body of literature linking happiness to health. Happiness is but one facet of a person's health. Genetic, behavioral, and environmental factors also play a role in the risk of dying from chronic disease.
Do you want to keep learning English with the news? If you do, put yes, 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 put yes, yes, yes in the comments below. And of course, make sure you like this lesson, share it with your friends, and subscribe so you're notified every time I post a new lesson. And you can get this free speaking guide where I share 6 tips on how to speak English fluently and confidently. You can click here to download it or look for the link in the description. And here's another lesson I know you'll love. Watch it now.